Prawn here with loads of tips and tricks for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 for beginners and more advanced players, and hopefully you'll find all of these tips useful. It will give you boosts in your money and in your skills. Check out the timestamps to jump to relevant points. One of the things you might not know about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is that you should be collecting cabbages at every opportunity. Now this sounds like a weird thing, but if you buy cabbages, you can afford to buy them for a very minimal amount of money. Now you can see here that I'm buying 4 cabbages from this trader, but collect any cabbages that you see and try and keep them in good condition if you can. And then what you want to do is you head over to, there's a special little cave. Now this is near the lair, if you've got to that point, you know what I'm talking about, when you go to the miller. But what you can do is find it in the bottom corner of the map, and I'll show you this here. If you ride along the river here, eventually on the right hand side, you'll find that it breaks into a stream and you can follow it through. Watch out for that white marking on the cliffside there, and then follow it around to the right. Now there's a stream down here that you'll want to follow and keep going. On the left hand side you should see another sort of hill face here, and then eventually you'll see it breaks into a chalky bit, so you can see a chalkier spot here. If you go up to this spot, either on your horse or on foot, and then get off there, what you'll do is you'll find a little character who lives in a cave here. Now, I've already visited him, so I know he exists, obviously. But what you want to do is take him cabbages, and then you can trade cabbages in exchange for sauerkraut. Now, you do have to make sure that you've got some decent cabbage that's in a good state. If you notice here, I've got 2 lots of cabbage. One of it is a bit iffy. It's worn out. It's not great, so it's already gone a bit rotten. He doesn't like that sort of cabbage. So you have to bring him good quality cabbage that's in a good state. And when you do so, he'll then give you sauerkraut. Now, this seems like a lot of effort potentially, but actually is really beneficial, and I'll show you why. Because basically the sauerkraut is not only worth more than the cabbage, but you also get a decent amount of it from him in exchange, and it has other benefits to it as well. So you can see I've got 4 sauerkraut for 4 cabbages. The sauerkraut itself is worth 25 groschen, which is obviously significantly more than the cabbage was. And you can see it has benefits. It gives you +2 nourishment and +10 health, so you've got a health benefit from it. But it also has an additional buff. So if you use the sauerkraut and then you head over to the player tab, you'll see that it has a buff on it, which actually increases your vitality as well. So sauerkraut is actually very beneficial to eat and easy to get, assuming that you can find or buy cabbage and then get to him before it gets rotten. But probably something you didn't know. Now, the cabbage cave, as it's known, is below Samine on the other side of the river, just down here in the left corner of the map. Picking locks is obviously an important skill set in Kingdom Come Deliverance, especially if you find a chest, which is basically in the middle of nowhere. Now, what you'll find is you'll often have your skill as just too low. So I'm trying to pick this hard chest here, and it's just not working. It's really difficult to do. My skills in lockpicking are not high enough yet, so you'll just find that you're just breaking lockpicks. There is one solution to this, or one thing that really helps. So if you manage to get hold of a potion called Quick Finger Potion, which you can get in various different strengths, you'll see that this strong Quick Finger Potion increases craftsmanship and thievery by 6 for 40 minutes. If you drink this, it's essentially like having better lockpicking skills than you actually do for a short period of time, and obviously other benefits as well. If you use this potion, you then get a buff, and using this buff then allows you to pick locks that you shouldn't be able to, and make the most of that. So I can now pick this hard lock. Now, it's not easy by any means. It's still a little bit fiddly to do, but you can see that it is much easier than it was before. So it is plausible to do now, whereas before it was pretty difficult. I've actually tried picking hard locks like this before and ended up breaking like 20 lock picks, but now I've managed to do it first time. So that's pretty easy. And so using a potion can really help, and these sort of potion boosts can help in other areas too. Another thing to watch out for is locks that you can pick, which you won't get in trouble for. So there's this house located in Trockowitz, which was actually part of a quest, so you had to go in there and investigate anyway, previously. But what I found is the door keeps locking. And because it's sort of at the back of the village and no one is really there, and there's nobody in the house, you can use this to practice your lockpicking. So regularly go to it when you're ever there. And because it's very easy, you can obviously easily do it. And every time you're doing it, you're improving your lockpicking skills. This house is also useful because it has a drying rack inside it, which means that you can dry out your herbs and your food and make them last for longer. So you can see I got a boost to my thievery skill there just from picking that very easy lock. So it's worth revisiting regularly, and then you can go in here for the drying rack. Another one of these spots is located at the Lower Samine Mill, so you have to go and talk to the miller and obviously interact with him in various ways. But if you go into this barn here, you can go to this chest, and again, that's the same sort of logic, easy lockpicking. You'll also find that there are some lockpicks on the table here, so even if you don't have any lockpicks, you can just grab these to practice. Another thing to do here at the mill is to talk to the miller himself. If you do that and trade with him,
show me your wares.
You'll find that he has not only the quick finger potion, several of them, but also this book on the skill of thievery. So you can buy that as well as lockpicks from him as well, so you can practice lockpicking even more. So these things combined will help improve your skills. So we can then study the book. And get a boost. So now I've got a boost to not only scholarship, but also thievery. And if you look at this one, for example, you can see lockpicks will be more durable, last longer, and you might even get it back. If you head over to Tokowitz, you'll find, if you go in this location here, and into this spot, and then through in here, you can talk to the scribe. And the scribe usually sells skill books. And you should find here that you'll find that he has some skill books for those things. So for thievery and for other things like that. Skilled hands and alchemy and whatnot. I've already used a lot of his books, but it is worth doing. And then obviously you can sell him other books that you've already read as well. Behind him, if you have a cheeky little look, you'll find there are books, skills books and recipes books. So we might as well just steal these. We can probably get away with it. Reading those books obviously gives you a boost in scholarship and other things. I'd recommend dropping them afterwards, though, because you don't want to be caught with books that obviously you shouldn't have. So regularly reading skills books that you find in the world is beneficial in a number of ways, because it not only boosts the relevant skill, for example, I'm reading about Houndmaster now, and I've just improved that, but it also helps with your scholarship level. So you can see that my scholarship level has now gone up to a level 11. Now, some books might be too high level and you can't read them. That means you obviously haven't read the previous books, but also maybe your reading skills just aren't as good as they should be. So read as many skills books as you can find, and this will really help. However, it's also worth noting that beyond skills books, you can also just read normal books. So you might find these sort of standard books when you're out in the world that you can just flick through. Now, this might seem pointless and like it will just give you random things about the game, but it actually boosts your scholarship level as well. So you can see the scholarship's just gone up to level 9 there when reading these books. You just flick through them like that and it counts as reading them, and then you get a boost of those points. You can buy these sorts of books from the scribe, and what you'll notice is there's a little star icon against books that you've not read, and then the books that you have read don't have a star against them. So this is an indicator of which books you need to buy and which you can just ignore. And obviously, the same applies when looting as well. So if you find a book and it hasn't got that marker against it, you know there's no point in picking it up. Read those books regularly, though, and that will help boost your overall skills. And obviously, they can just be sold to the scribe or a trader once you finish with them as well, so you can get rid of them. You don't need to necessarily hang on to them. But it is worth doing because it will boost your scholarship levels and skill points too. If you've got problems with your horse in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it could be down to a few different things. And obviously, shooting in the back of the head with an arrow is not ideal, but there might be other things that are causing issues. If your horse is throwing you off, it could be because of several reasons. One of them is if you try and push it too hard. So if you keep pushing it beyond the limit of spurring it, it will throw you off like that. The reason it does this, you'll see down the bottom left of the screen, just above your health bar, the horse's stamina bar. And the little gold bar below it is how fast you're making it go. You see the little horse icon that moves backwards with that. If you try and push the sprinting way beyond this, the horse will just get annoyed and throw you off. So you have to be careful to balance how much you're pushing the horse with how much stamina it's got. and that bar, which is the gauge of how much you can spur it. Another reason that a horse might throw you off is actually related to something else entirely. So if you find that you're trying to push your horse into running and it's just refusing to do so and it keeps complaining and then eventually just chucks you off, then it might well be down to overloading. So using the horse's inventory is a really good way of stopping yourself from becoming over-encumbered, but you can push it too far. When you press I to go to the menu and then click on the horse section on the right at the top there, you'll see how much space your horse can take. It's currently 158 of 158. If I just drop one thing out of the horse's storage, I can now run around with him quite happily without any problems. So just watch out you're not putting too much weight on your horse. That could be the issue. If you've stolen a horse and taken it to the horse trader at the Nomad camp, but for some reason he won't let you access the horse black market, what I found is a good thing to do is just to jump on the horse and then talk to him while you're on the back of the horse. And for some reason this helps to unlock that ability to be able to talk to him. Sometimes if you just put it nearby, it doesn't quite work. He did tell you initially where to put it, but I keep making the mistake of not putting it in the right place. So just go in there and talking to him while sitting on the back of the horse can be useful. So obviously selling horses to him is also beneficial because you can make quite a bit of money doing this. So if you're trying to make money, one of the ways to do it is to just steal horses without being seen, take them to this guy and sell them. Alternatively, you can use him as a way to upgrade your horses, but you can see here, for example, this horse is going to cost me 1,000 groschen in order to take it as my own. So instead, I'll just opt to sell it. Sadly, it won't be making quite as much money as that, but you still will make a good bit of profit for it. So hopefully these few tips has helped with your horse issues. Subscribe to see more. So picking herbs is actually one of the most valuable things that you can do early in the game. It's easy to do and has several benefits, which I'm going to show you. One of which is it leads to the ability to then craft various different potions, including Saviour Schnapps, which is really important for saving the game regularly to make sure you don't lose loads of progress, which can be very frustrating. So I'm going to show you how to make that in a second. But also picking herbs has other benefits to it. So if you go out in the world, and especially around that herb woman's hut, even in the first area, if you pick a bunch of things, watch out for belladonna, because that's a really valuable herb to have, and we'll need that later on. But picking herbs unlocks various different skills in the section here under the survival tree, and there are various ones here that are really worth having. You'll notice, for example, that leg day has the added benefit when you're picking herbs, you'll also get experience in the strength skill. So going around picking up herbs will eventually lead to a strength boost and perk points that you can then spend in that section. So rather than having to worry about being overburdened or fighting for ages, you can then unlock these skills. And you'll see that I'm now using Pack Mule to increase my carrying capacity. Another one is Lucky Find, which is unlocked from the survival tree. And that means you can collect extra herbs, but also occasionally you'll get treasures when doing it. Now I found various different things here, including like dice and rings and brooches and all sorts of other things that you can either sell or use with your character. Now you'll find herbs out in the wild, but you'll also find occasional herb gardens like this one in villages and nearby areas. You can go in there and you can basically just pick all the herbs, and the villagers don't seem to mind. They don't think it's theft. It's not a problem. You can basically just loot this whole area, get all the herbs. I'd recommend drying them if possible. Find a drying hut to dry them out and they'll last longer. But make the most of this because you can boost your skills up, as you can see. Now, as you know, when you're using the game, you can only save by sleeping in a bed that belongs to you. So you can see this bed here at the Herb Woman's Hut allows you to save as you sleep. And you have to find several beds in the world like that. You can buy them at inns and other things, rent those, and then sleep in them, and that'll save. But the only other way to save is either to complete a quest, a mainline quest, or to quit the game entirely. So this is one thing you can do to cheese the game a little bit if you need to. You can save and quit, then just reload the game before any sort of major events. However, making Saviour Schnapps will save that problem and make your life a lot easier. And I'm going to show you how to unlock Saviour Schnapps without actually having to worry about finding the recipe. So here's the recipe for you. You need belladonna, wine, and nettles. So you need to find belladonna, which is going to be the hardest part of that. And then you need nettles as well. And then this is the process for doing it. So first of all, grab some wine off the shelf on the left-hand side of the alchemy table and pour it into the cauldron. Then you'll see there's an option to press I for your inventory. From here, select the belladonna and the nettle that you've collected and then deposit that on the shelf. That then prepares it ready to go. Then what you want to do is to put a handful of nettle into the wine, and then we need to drop the cauldron down onto the fire and then boil it for 2 turns. So drop it down. I tend to use the bellows immediately to get it boiling quickly, and then turn the sand over. So we're going to put the sand glass over and wait for the sand to drain out. Once it's drained out, you'll then flip it over again. So press the button to flip it back over, and then wait for it to drain out again, and then that'll have completed the 2 turns for that. At this stage, once that has drained out, you can then raise the cauldron up. So press the button to raise the cauldron up from the fire, because you don't want it to boil for any longer. And then we've got to grind belladonna. So you get the 2 handfuls of belladonna, put it into the mortar and pestle, and then grind it up. Now, belladonna is very hard to find in the world, so make sure you grab it as soon as you can and dry it out if possible, or buy any that you find from merchants, because it's going to be very useful for crafting the Saviour Schnapps, and you'll need a lot of this to make the game easier for you. Add that to the cauldron, then drop the cauldron back down, and then we're going to boil for 1 more turn. So put it down into the position above the fire, then tug on the bellows, and then flip the sand glass back over and wait for the sand to drain out just now until that's finished. And that process is pretty straightforward, as you can see, but the belladonna is going to hold you back from it, so you just need to watch out for that in the world, because it can be pretty tricky to find. I'm hopefully going to do a video on where to find that soon, so subscribe to see that. But then you grab the file and then just pour out from the cauldron into that, and then you've completed the Saviour Schnapps. Now, this is how you unlock Saviour Schnapps without even learning the recipe, so you can do this really early in the game, learn that, and then you can craft it. And I'd recommend crafting as many potions as you possibly can. I'm going to show you one in a minute that's much easier to craft, but doing so, crafting loads, gives you loads of alchemy points. Alchemy points give you these bonuses, like the ability to craft an additional potion for every potion you craft. And then if you go further down, you'll see Secret of the Matter 2, which allows you to get 2 extra potions for every potion you crafted, or even 3 in some instances. And that means that you can just keep getting loads and loads and loads of potions while you're crafting, even just doing 1. Then obviously you have the benefit of going to a trader and being able to sell the additional potions that you've got. You'll see there that I've got 84 strong chamomile brews, for example. I've made a lot of those, and although the value of them isn't very high, if you produce loads, you can go and sell them really easily and make money from doing so. Also, having a bunch of Marigold decoctions is useful because they're useful for healing. You can sell any additional herbs that you don't need, so you might have collected a lot of herbs unnecessarily. You can sell those, and then when you're at a trade, I'd also recommend watching out for other things, like charcoal, for example, which can be used in other crafting things, crafting soap, for example. It's also worth pointing out that a lot of the potion crafts are the same in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as they were in the original game. So if you find recipes on the wiki, you can actually unlock various different potions without even finding the recipes in the game itself, which might be cheesing it, but Marigold Decoction is one of those, so I want to show you how to make that as well, because it's really easy to make, much easier than the Saviour Schnapps. If you unlock this, you can then craft this really early on, just keep repeating that process and unlocking all those points. So obviously you need nettle and you need marigold, both of which are really easy to get, especially the nettle. Grab some water and throw it into the cauldron. And then obviously, as I showed you earlier, press I to deposit your marigold and nettle onto the shelf in whatever order you like. Then we're going to put a handful of nettle into the cauldron. And don't forget, we've got to then lower the cauldron down onto the fire and then warm it up. So I usually use the bellows just to make sure it's boiling basically immediately. And then we're flipping the sand glass over to start that process. So you can see very similar with a lot of these potions in what you have to do, putting it over the fire, making sure it's boiling, and then just watching the sand glass until it goes into the right position. But we're flipping it over again because we're going to boil it for 2 turns. So just boiling it here, make sure that that's boiled up nicely, and that's then done. And then raise it up out of the way of the fire. And the next part of this is with the marigold. So with the marigold, you've got to put it in the mortar and pestle. So grab 2 handfuls of that and chuck it in the mortar and pestle and then grind it up. And you grind up this process. Now, it's worth noting, obviously, some of these are quite complicated, but the more you do it, the more skills you unlock in the alchemy section. And then if you make a mistake, sometimes you'll be forgiven for that mistake as well. So these get a little less arduous as you go through, a little less problematic. But once that's done, you don't need to boil it again, so you can just pour it straight into the file, and then that's ready. So if this is your first time doing this, you'll then unlock this. And as I said, you can do this early on, right when you get to the Herbalwoman's Hut. So when you've done the chamomile brew, you can do the marigold decoction. Now, marigold decoction is particularly useful in battles because it will help heal you pretty easily. So it gives you a nice healing boost after a fight. But also when you've crafted a whole bunch of potions, if you're on the road and you're traveling along and you see that there are enemies ahead, you can obviously pre-apply a lot of these potions. I really like Bowmans Brew, for example, which improves your archery skills. You'll see Aqua Vitalis improves your health. You can also get the Artismia, which improves strength. All of these combined, or even just a couple of them, can make quite a difference to your battles. If you're surrounded by enemies, you've got multiple enemies to deal with, or you're just early in the game and it's a bit of a struggle to win against enemies that just seem to be better at a lot of these things. It's not just this, though. You can actually use them for other things, including talking to people and charming them, or, for example, picking locks, which can also be really handy, which is another potion you can get, Quick Finger. Watch out for that one. That allows you to pick locks more easily. Another thing you'll find in the game is you often get covered in blood and mud and other things, and you'll hear people comment on it, and actually sometimes it can affect the things that people will say to you and the choices that you can make in the game. So one way to check is to press F1 on PC, put it into photo mode, and then you can have a look at your character and see how much blood you've got on you. Obviously, what you want to do is to clean that blood off before talking to people. You usually find these sorts of troughs knocking around in villages and all over the place, and you can wash yourself off there and get yourself reasonably clean. And again, you can check with photo mode to see how clean you are. Now, you'll notice that my clothing is still pretty dirty, so one solution to that is soap. Again, I'm going to show you how to craft the soap, and so that you'll unlock it, and it'll be pretty easy to craft. This is why I mentioned needing charcoal earlier on, because you need thistle, charcoal, and dandelion for this. So you can buy charcoal, and thistle and dandelion are pretty easy to find. So what we want to do is follow this process. You need 2 lots of thistle into the mortar and pestle to grind this up, and you'll need to have a base of oil into the cauldron. So making soap is worth doing because you better clean your clothes, but obviously you can also sell soap really easily to other people. So it is worth doing. It's pretty easy to do apart from that charcoal, which we need to acquire from merchants, but it's reasonably easy to get. So grind up the 2 lots of thistle, chuck them into the oil in the cauldron, and then you need to boil this, obviously, and follow the process for doing this. But basically, we're going to set this up so that we can do this. And if you've got those perks unlocked for alchemy, you should be able to actually make loads of soap quite easily. So flip the sand glass over once it starts boiling, and we're going to let it boil for 1 turn here. And obviously go through this standard alchemy process and do this as much as you like. Make a load of them. And there is a perk for doing these sorts of things at night to boost that as well. Flip over the sand glass again, and we're going to boil it for a 2nd turn, and just keep that going nicely on the fire there. And then once that's done, lift it up and take that out of the way. Now you need to take the dandelion, and with the dandelion, you just have to add that to the cauldron and boil it for another turn. So just throw that in. You don't need to grind it, but you do need to put the cauldron back down again and then boil it for another turn with the sand glass. So you just flip that over. I like to use the bellows just to make sure it's boiling immediately before I flip the sand glass over. I found that this doesn't seem to cause problems, and it doesn't mean you have to worry about waiting for the cauldron to heat up, so it just seems a bit easier. Once that's done, lift it back up again, grab your charcoal, put it into the mortar and pestle, grind it up, and then we're going to put that in with the recipe we've just made. So just make sure you grind that up nicely, and then throw that into the cauldron. So we'll stick that into the cauldron now, and then that's that recipe for soap done. So you can then grab a file and dispense it into there, and then we'll be able to use the soap to clean your clothes. So one of the ways to get yourself clean is obviously to go to a bathhouse and pay for it. But another way you can do it is just with soap and washing it. So you can see I've got 11 soap now. Now you can find these laundry spots around at the nearby ponds and little places like this. If you see like a little bridge that goes out near a rock, it might conveniently have some soap next to it, but you'll see that there's an option to launder your clothes. So this is near one of the villages, but you'll also find them scattered around the map in various different locations. And you'll see there's a little icon on there which will say laundry next to it as well on the map near these bits of water. Basically go up to the edge here, and then you can launder your clothes. So you can basically wash all of your clothes with the soap that you've just created, washing off any of the mud from it. So as well as getting the blood off, you can also get the mud off. Make yourself look cleaner, more presentable, and then you'll have a better time when dealing with people. I'm going to show you how to brew and unlock Bowmans Brew, which is an excellent potion to use. It increases your marksmanship by 3, slows down stamina loss when aiming for 10 minutes. so it's really worth using just before you get into a scrap. I like to use it when early engaging bandits and enemies on the road. So if you're traveling somewhere or fast traveling, you see enemies at a distance, you can obviously use your arrows beforehand to soften them up as they get close. And using Bowmans Brew just increases your skill in marksmanship as well, so it's well worth doing. I'm going to show you how to unlock Bowmans Brew, but first of all you're going to need eyebright and St. John's wort and find those in the world. You'll need spirits in the cauldron, and obviously because we don't have the recipe yet, you'll need to press I at this point and put eyebright and St. John's wort on the shelf so that you can use them. We then need 2 handfuls of eyebright. Notice that I'm using a dried version of this, but either is fine whether you've picked it fresh or dried it out. Lower the cauldron down, and then I like to tug on the bellows just to get it going. And we need to boil it for 3 turns. So turn the sandglass over and wait for that to drain out, and then obviously turn it over again and then again and boil it 3 times. Now I'm going to make a mistake in the process of crafting the Bowmans Brew because I want to show you something. If you pay attention to this, you'll notice when you make a mistake that Henry will make a comment on it at the end to suggest what you should have done instead. The more potions you brew, the more skills you unlock in the alchemy section, and at one point you'll have a skill that will enable you to make mistakes during the brewing process and yet still craft good quality potions. So it's worth brewing loads of these if you can. Obviously you can also sell the potions. Now we grab the St. John's wort and put it in the mortar after you've raised the cauldron up so it doesn't continue to boil while you're doing this, and then grind that up in the mortar and pestle. And then what you want to do is to put that into the cauldron as well and follow these steps here. The next part of it is actually to distill using the file. So I actually poured it directly from the cauldron, but what you want to do here is to distill it, so use the still instead. But the reason I did this was to demonstrate the fact that Henry will comment on the error that you've made. You still get a Bowmans Brew, but it's not the superior quality, so it's not the best quality one that you could make.
Distill it.
Once you've done that and you've unlocked it, it will then appear in the book. Now, in future, in the recipe book, you can head to that, and as long as you've got the right amount of the herbs, you can then just press and hold the prepare button on PC, it's E, and then it'll deploy the various ingredients onto the shelf automatically, and then you can just repeat this process and keep on brewing it. You'll probably recognise this spot in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as the spot where everybody got separated at the beginning of the game when there was a big problem here. But if you go to revisit it, you'll find there's a bandit camp there instead. Except, as you can see in my game, there isn't anymore because I've killed them all, so now they're all in the graves here. I did this with stealth kills, and I want to show you how to deal with bandit camps because you'll find a bunch of them and situations where there's a lot of people you have to deal with, and stealth killing is a much easier way of doing it. Killing them in their sleep so they can't fight back. It sounds dirty, but it's great for profit, it's great for boosting your skills, and it works really well. It also has the added bonus in this instance of giving me a couple of horses to sell, because there was a pen here with 2 horses in it that you can now steal without any consequence and head across the nomad camp on the other side of the river to sell to the horse trader. So if you've not unlocked this already, there's a camp on the other side there, and there's a horse trader that will buy stolen horses from you. This is a good way to make money as well, and can be really easy in this instance. Now, stealth killing is all about killing them in their sleep, so they can't fight back. There's multiple enemies in these bandit camps, sometimes maybe 6 enemies you have to deal with. If you try and take them on early in the game, standard, during the daytime, you're probably going to get murdered. It's very difficult to fight because you'll end up surrounded and in a lot of problems. So a few different tips on how to do this. First of all, you'll need to make most of the outfit system. Obviously, you know you're wearing armor for good protection, but if you go into the menu, there's a change outfit option down the bottom, and you can then go about selecting stuff that's a bit more stealthy. Think about darker clothes, stuff that doesn't have armor benefits to it, but is darker, gives you a conspicuous bonus, visibility reduction, and things like that. Makes less noise, essentially. You don't want your armor clanking around when you're trying to stealth your way into a camp. You can use this and then switch between those outfits really easily from this menu. So you can see I've got a much more stealthy outfit here now, and I can switch to that when I need it for my stealth camp kills. As you can see, it's nice and dark and very dodgy looking. The next thing you really need is a knife. So if you head over to the merchant in the nomad camp and go to the training section, you can buy a dagger from him. Dagger is the only weapon that you can use as stealth killing. You can't use your sword or your bludgeon or your axe or whatever else, so you need a dagger on you. You can see it's really affordable. It's just 18 groschen, so it's pretty easy to get. You can purchase that as soon as possible and it'll make the most of it. Now, the next stage is basically finding a bandit camp. If you come across one, make sure you use Saviour Schnapps beforehand to save it. Then press T on PC to do the wait thing, and then just wait until somewhere around midnight or around then, and most of the people in the camp will then be asleep. You can then use the Nighthawk potion to make it so that you can see a lot better, because obviously you don't want to pull a torch out and show where you are in the world, so Nighthawk can really help, unless you can find that you can see well enough without it. Sneak into the camp, and then we're basically going to try and pick off each enemy one at a time. You should find that a bunch of them are now asleep when they'd normally be awake, and you can just sneak up to them and stealth kill them. Now, if you do this often, you'll end up getting bonus points for stealth and also for strength, so you can see that happen in a second where I'm getting points there, leveling up in different departments as you do this. So it's beneficial in that way, and obviously we can also steal all their goods when we're finished with this as well. I'd make sure you kill everybody in the camp first before you go about trying to loot, though. You might find a couple of stragglers that aren't asleep. Obviously, you need to deal with these as well, because if they see you before you deal with everyone else, it's going to be a problem. This guy calls for help, but what he doesn't know is I've killed all his friends, so there is nobody coming to help him. It's only me and him, and I'm not going to let him live. So basically, watching out for these people that are roaming around and could be a problem. You might need to take care of them first, or if you're lucky like I was, you might be able to take care of him afterwards and deal with him on his own. But it's much easier to deal with just one person than a whole load of them, and so you can see the benefits of it. Now go about looting all the people in the camp. Now, you'll often find quite quickly that you'll become over-encumbered, too over-encumbered to sprint, and you might have to pick and choose what you're going to loot, especially early in the game where you haven't got much ability to carry much weight. There are skills in the strength tree which will unlock the ability to carry more weight, but at the initial stages you'll just find you're over-encumbered. If you've got a horse, you can send stuff to your horse from your inventory, and then obviously you can go and sell it. And you can take all this stuff to a merchant and sell it, especially that nomad trader, because he doesn't mind buying stolen stuff. So using these tips, you'll hopefully find your way into camps, being able to quickly and easily murder everybody and to take all their gear without much hassle. If you come to this spot here, which is near Vildeck Pond, there's a guy called a skill teacher here who's essentially has an archery range. This is actually part of the quest line, so you'll find him anyway eventually, but you're looking for the huntsman's son. And when you come here, you can then compete in little archery competitions, and they're fairly easy to do. So you just go compete, and then choose your weapon of choice. I'm going crossbow at the moment, and I recommend experienced archery, because it's relatively easy. So then you're just shooting your target that you're in front of. So those guys have got that one, I've got this one. And with the crossbow, I find what you have to do is just aim down a little bit below the bullseye and a little bit off to the left here, and then maybe you can get it. But doing this gives you strength, agility, and marksman skill points. So you just keep doing it over and over and over. If you win, you'll end up making money because you're paying a little bit each time, and then eventually you'll start making money on it. And as long as you're doing a good job by hitting the target, which I'm not at the moment, you'll end up getting skill points out of it, and it's easy to repeat over and over again, and like that get a skill point, agility point, strength points, and archery points. And then when you get to the end of it, you'll often find if you win, so you still got 38 points. Now I've got an improved marksmanship at the top right there, and you get money for doing it, and then you can just keep going back in. So you can go in again, repeat. And like I said, experienced archer seems to be a good middle ground for making a reasonable amount of money. I seem to lose mastery a lot. The other bonus of doing this is you're not actually using your own bolts. You're given bolts for it, so this isn't wasting yours. You're not breaking your arrows or your bolts. You just keep practicing without any worry. I randomly found a book and a sword and a skill book in a little location which might be handy. So this is behind the nomads camp on a little rock here, and you can see this log sort of leads to it. It's a little bit tricky to get to, but there is the Art of the Sword 1 and a hunting sword located at this spot. So this would be good early on if you want to try and grab these. This is located behind the nomad camp, and you obviously have to go through these bushes, but it's at the far end of the nomad camp where you'd usually find defense. So this includes the Art of the Sword 1 skill book, which is obviously the first in that chain, which you can read and improve your skills on, and then also a sword as a bonus, and it's right next to where the fence would be, so you could read it and then sell that to him if you don't want to use the sword, for example, which is usually there. You've probably already heard people tell you that you need to get MUTT as soon as possible, so try and hunt him down using that quest initially as early as you can, because it is well worth getting. He's useful in a variety of different ways that might not be obvious, but the most obvious one is the attack. So he can actually help make battles a little bit easier, especially when you find you're outnumbered or you've got an enemy which has a slight advantage to you. So you can see here that I've got this enemy coming at me with he's got a shield, and obviously I'm trying to shoot him with arrows, but the shield's going to block them. If you send MUTT to sick the enemy, he'll then attack, and that will then stop the guy from having his shield up, or maybe he'll attack from behind, and that'll make the guy more vulnerable, and I can then shoot him with my arrows, and it'll just make lighter work of these baddies. So he can be really handy in that way. I'd recommend giving him a treat afterwards as a reward, and to improve your abilities with him and just overall get those points going. But what you'll find is he also has other uses. So, for example, if you bring up the quick menu, you can also set him to track certain things, and it's worth watching out for these. So, in this instance, I'm doing a quest where I've got to try and find a poacher. The poacher's camp is abandoned, but he does have a knife laying around. You can let MUTT sniff that knife, set him off to then track, and he'll then go and wander around in the woods trying to find him. This makes it a lot easier, because otherwise you'd have to be looking yourself, and there aren't any obvious clues in this instance, so MUTT can do this. I've also found there are other items in the world which you'll randomly find in the miscellaneous tab, which will sometimes have a little marker on them saying that a dog could sniff this and then track the creature or thing that you're looking for, so that can be pretty handy. He's also useful for hunting and for other things, and he'll give you an early warning system about bandits that are hiding out. So if you notice him growling or woofing a lot, pay attention to your surroundings, because he's basically alerting you to enemies in the nearby location. This is helpful when traveling around, and it will stop you from getting jumped out at and ambushed, and it just makes life a lot easier for you. So not only is he useful for attacking, tracking, but also for other things too. So definitely get MUTT and try and upgrade his skills as well and your ability to work with him. When it comes to stealing things, obviously robbing everything you find is a good way of making money, but what you don't want to do is get caught with those things on you, because they'll get confiscated by the guards anyway, and then you'll lose potential profit for that. So what I like to do is transfer it to my horse, so it's not on my immediate person. This also helps with over encumbrance, so you can send it to your horse by just opening the inventory and pressing X to transfer it, assuming that it's nearby, so my horse is quite close to be able to send this off. This then allows me to travel to a good place to be able to sell this stuff without getting in trouble. Don't try and sell it to a nearby merchant. Instead, what you want to do is go to the nomad camp and talk to the fence here. Now, first of all, don't forget to transfer the stuff back from your horse that you just put on the horse when you're in the other location, including all the stolen stuff, especially the stolen stuff, because it's easier to sell that to fence than anywhere else. You won't make as much money, but it's one thing to do. And then talk to the fence, which is this chap here, and sell all the stolen items that you've got. He will take any of the stolen items without any problem. If you try and sell them to a trader in a town, then you'll get problems there, because obviously you're trying to sell them stuff which is a bit iffy and shouldn't belong to you. And that's just a clue of a potential problem that you've been causing. Now, there is a skill which you can unlock a little later on, which is a handy hint as things. So if you have a look here, I'll just steal this bread as an example. So just pickpocket some bread from this lady, and I've now got that. There's also a skill under the thievery section called Thieves' Eyes, and you'll see it'll tell you which items are stolen and which are considered stolen in a location. So a red hand icon indicates items considered stolen in your current location, whereas a grey hand indicates they are not considered stolen. So you can sell them to the merchant without worry, and they won't be confiscated during search. You can see here, obviously, that the bread that I've stolen has still got a red hand mark against it. Need a spot of food? Watch out for these. These are beehives. And you can open them and then just get some honey. Obviously, honey can be sold as well, so you can just take that. And now I've got a bunch of honey. You might occasionally, while out in the world, get a little notification in the top right of your screen saying you discovered nest, and you might be wondering what that is. Well, it's often just there's a bird's nest in a nearby tree. Now, these are worth getting, but they are sometimes a little difficult to get, and you might end up having to look in the branches and try and work out where the nest is. Nests contain, obviously, eggs, but also other things, so you'll often find little trinkets and treasures in there. This nest was actually at a pretty easy location to be able to grab that, and a random demonstration of how easy they can be, although I missed it when I was first looking. But then some nests you need to shoot down out of trees using an arrow, so you can see this one's a bit harder to get to. I won't be able to reach that one, so you will need a bow or a crossbow for this. But if you can shoot those down, you'll often find that they've got good things in them. So, for example, this one's got an ordinary sword guard in it, which is obviously used for smithing, so we can end up using that in crafting purposes in the future. And then another one a little later on also has treasures in it. Now, you are risking losing the arrows when you shoot them down, although you can see this arrow is still stuck in the nest, which is quite nice. But they are worth doing. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you've made it all the way to the end. I realise it's been a really long video, but hopefully loads of in-depth tips and tricks that you found useful. Subscribe to see more of them, because I'm going to be doing more in the future. And check out the playlist linked in the description to see others as well. And then let me know in the comments if you've got any cool tips that you'd like to share with everybody. Thanks very much for watching. Appreciate you.
I'm sorry. You really kicked my ass.